when the commonplace, like the town clock, runs wild, are we reminded that its machinery must be regulated by a man's hands? Today, men's hands are regulating most of the machinery of our everyday lives. The machine is the chief single item of modern civilization. Man has set the machine to work for him. In this factory in an average American town, diesel engines are being made. The engines will do the work of horses and waterfalls, move great weights, drive other machines. The manufacture of a machine begins in the foundry, where the very steel itself is made. In the making of steel, the worker's skill is an essential ingredient. The talent of industrial engineers determines what kind of machines will be created from the steel. Then other hands take over to translate the blueprints into machines, perhaps machines to make machines, all run by men, all guided by human skill and intelligence. New devices are constantly discovered to ease the worker's physical burden. The workers and their machines together produce more than a mechanical gadget. They make modern living possible. The voice of the man behind the machine commands attention in the United States. It's heard at meetings where management and labor talk their problems over at conference tables. Some of the men now sitting at management side of the table started as factory workers. During the war, management and labor together devised new processes, new machines to produce the materials of war better and faster. Their experience is now guiding production of the materials of peace. More and more people realize that the twin supports of American industry, capital and labor, must both share the weight if the structure is to be firm. These meetings may not solve every problem, but their give and take sessions increase understanding on both sides. They bring concrete improvements like this first aid station where minor injuries are treated. A doctor is also on call. When the workers point out the need for better facilities, management follows the suggestions through. Improved relations between labor and management create a feeling of ease between worker and worker. Meet Charlie Blake, master mechanic. Men like him who work with their hands are not the servants of the machine, they're its masters. Charlie has more than skill with tools, of course. There's skill with men, too, knowing how to get along on a team. Charlie Blake, wage earner. With 15 years of experience behind him, he's well paid for his skill. He and his family can share the high standard of living in their Middle Western community. His tools are his own. Most of the men in the factory have a sense of pride in their machines, their work, and the output of the plant. Sometimes there's a sense of ownership as well. Many workers in the United States have shares in the companies that employ them. Let's follow Charlie home from the factory on Saturday afternoon. Get to know him a little better. Meet his family. He lives close enough to walk home. His co-worker may live in the suburbs and use a car to get back and forth. No thanks, rather walk. Charlie likes these streets and knows them well. The people have been his friends for years. Most of the Blakes' neighbors are working people, too. The Blakes bought their house 5 years ago. They don't own it outright yet, but they will long before Charlie's son grows up. Charlie Blake, family man. He met Mrs. Blake when they were at school together. The phone call interrupted important work in the kitchen. Putting up preserves is an old custom in American homes. The Blakes know how important it is today to conserve food at home, to release supplies for the hungry in other lands. A Saturday afternoon get-together with the kids and the neighbor's boy. The midget auto's been the major project for weeks now, with some expert assistance from the small fry. Charlie started his life work by tinkering with machines this way. Maybe the young man next door won't be a mechanic, but he'll know what makes machinery run. He's figured out how to apply about 50 years of transportation progress to this gadget of his. Of course, he still has to use his own self-starter. With 2 growing boys and a hungry husband to feed, Mrs. Blake doesn't get very far away from the kitchen during the afternoon. Time for a familiar father and son ritual. Junior can't wait to get rid of his beard. The evening meal at the Blake home is simple. With only slight variations, you might see the same scene almost anywhere in town. In the evening, Mr. and Mrs. Blake join their neighbors in the local auditorium. It's not entertainment that brings them together tonight, but the serious business of education, the practical matter of their children's schooling. This is a meeting of the Parent Teachers Association of one of the town's schools. By talking over their mutual problems once a month, parents and teachers can help one another solve them. Charlie finds he has something to say, and says it. That's why he's here tonight. Sunday is supposed to be a day of rest, but Charlie prefers fussing with his car to sleeping late. The youngsters catch up on their reading. The big moment arrives and the Blakes pile into the car for their weekly outing. Although their neighborhood has plenty of grass and trees, they never miss a chance to get out to the nearby rolling country. Charlie had to work hard for his car. He was able to get it because the system of mass production, which depends on men like him, brought it within his reach. In the United States, there's one automobile to every 5 people. This valley has a special meaning for Charlie. He was born here. This is more than a visit. It's a homecoming. Charlie's folks are always overjoyed to see the whole family. It makes up in some degree for losing him to the city and the factory. The mechanic is still a farmer's son. Charlie Blake, farmer. The younger generation, city-bred, finds feeding the animals a strange game. Some promising candidates for the preserve shelf keep Mrs. Blake busy. The Blakes find a spiritual renewal in their frequent visits to the country. By evening, the family is homeward bound. Some of them haven't quite lasted the day through. And Monday is another day, another work day. More machines to be made, more wheels.